When Marcus got home that night, he didn't celebrate. He put his phone on silent. He ate something simple. Then he lay on his bed staring at the ceiling, realizing that hitting $100,000 didn't bring clarity. It brought pressure. He thought reaching this number would feel like relief. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of something bigger. Like the game had just changed levels and the consequences of mistakes were suddenly heavier. The next morning at work, a coworker was once again talking about crypto. This cycle is different, man. If you don't get in now, you'll regret it. Marcus nodded politely. He noticed something though. The people who sounded the most confident were usually the ones with the least proof. That night he opened YouTube. One creator was saying you had to beat the market or you were wasting your time. Another was saying real estate was the only real path to wealth. Another was saying life was too short to keep sacrificing. For the first time, Marcus realized how loud financial advice is. Everyone sounds certain. Everyone speaks in absolutes. And almost no one knows your actual life. This is where a lot of people get stuck. They think more information will make them safer. But too much information usually creates paralysis. You don't move because you're afraid of choosing the wrong door. So Marcus did something simple. He decided to remove complexity from his decisions. Complex systems feel smart, but simple systems are what people actually stick to. He wrote down his real numbers: monthly spending, savings rate, employer match, interest rates on any debt. And that's when he noticed something uncomfortable. Investing wasn't the real problem. The real problem was that he had never designed a system. He had just been disciplined. Discipline gets you to $100,000. Systems are what take you beyond it. A system means your future self doesn't have to negotiate with your present emotions. It means decisions are locked in when you're calm, not when headlines are loud. So Marcus automated everything. On payday, money moved out of his checking account before he could touch it. Some went to investments, some went to savings, and he adjusted his lifestyle around what was left. There's a strange psychological effect that happens when you do this. Money you never see doesn't feel like money you can spend. And money you don't feel like you can spend is money that quietly builds your future. Over time, Marcus noticed something else. When the market went down, his instincts told him to pause. When the market went up, his instincts told him to speed up. Automation made both instincts irrelevant. He invested when the market was high. He invested when the market was low. He invested when the news was calm. He invested when the news was terrifying. And slowly, the emotional noise faded. Wealth doesn't grow in dramatic moments. It grows in boring ones. Most days, nothing exciting happens. No notifications. No sudden breakthroughs. Just small, quiet progress stacking on top of itself. And then one day, you look back and realize the thing that once felt impossible has become normal. Marcus also realized that the real danger isn't losing money. The real danger is stepping out of the game. People stop investing when the market crashes. They pause when life gets busy. They loosen discipline when their income rises. They think they're taking a short break. What they're actually doing is interrupting the compounding process. Slowing compounding is almost the same as breaking it. So Marcus made a decision. He would keep his investing boring. He wouldn't chase trends. He wouldn't react to headlines. He wouldn't trade long-term progress for short-term excitement. He decided that fun would live in his life, not in his portfolio. Travel, experiences, time with people he cared about. But his investments would stay quiet, patient, and predictable. Over the next few years, something interesting started to happen. The $100,000 stopped feeling like a number he had to protect. It started to feel like a system that protected him. He wasn't checking balances every day anymore. He wasn't refreshing apps in parking lots. The money was working in the background, and his life was happening in the foreground. And that shift changed how he thought about wealth. Wealth stopped being a finish line. It became infrastructure, something that didn't exist to be admired, but to quietly carry the weight of his future. That's the real transition at $100,000, not the money itself. The mindset shift from chasing outcomes to building systems. Once Marcus stopped treating his money like something fragile, his behavior changed, not in dramatic ways, in small, quiet ones. He stopped checking his balance every morning. He stopped refreshing apps after every headline. He stopped feeling like every decision had to be perfect. Instead, he focused on being consistent. Consistency felt boring at first, but boring started to feel powerful. There's a strange comfort that comes when you realize you don't have to outsmart the world. You just have to stop sabotaging yourself. Marcus noticed that most financial stress comes from trying to time things. People want to buy at the perfect moment. They want to sell at the perfect moment. They want certainty before they move. But certainty is expensive. The price of waiting for certainty is usually missed opportunity. So he made peace with imperfection. He accepted that some of his investments would be made before drops. Some would be made before rallies. Over time, those moments averaged out. That acceptance freed up mental space. He stopped thinking about money all the time. And ironically, that's when his money started to work better for him. As the months passed, Marcus began to notice something subtle. His lifestyle hadn't really changed, but his sense of safety had. He wasn't rich, but he wasn't fragile anymore either. A flat tire stopped being a crisis. An unexpected bill stopped being panic-inducing. A job change stopped feeling terrifying. The money wasn't there to impress anyone. It was there to reduce the number of things in his life that could knock him off balance. This is another quiet shift that happens after your first 6 figures. Money stops being about buying more things. It starts being about buying fewer worries. And that shift is powerful. Marcus also noticed how his relationship with risk matured. Before, risk felt emotional. Now, risk felt mathematical. He stopped asking, "What if this goes wrong?" and started asking, "What happens if I do nothing for 10 years?" That question reframed everything. Doing nothing in investing doesn't mean being passive in life. It means letting your long-term plan do its job without interference. Most people don't lose money because their strategy is bad. They lose money because they abandon good strategies at the worst possible moments. Marcus decided that if he was going to fail, it wouldn't be because he got bored of patience. He also realized something uncomfortable about motivation. Motivation fades. Habits don't. When he relied on motivation, his progress was uneven. When he relied on habits, progress became automatic. That's why automation mattered more than willpower. Willpower works when you're rested and confident. Automation works when you're tired, distracted, or uncertain. As his net worth grew, Marcus didn't feel dramatically different day to day, but his options quietly expanded. He could walk away from a bad job. He could take a pay cut for better work. He could say no to things that didn't align with his life. Not because he was wealthy, but because he wasn't trapped. That's the real payoff most people miss. Money at this stage doesn't buy luxury. It buys leverage. Leverage over your time. Leverage over your stress. Leverage over the pace of your life. And that leverage compounds too. People often imagine wealth as a finish line you cross one day. But in reality, it's more like building a foundation under your feet. Every year you invest, that foundation gets thicker. At some point, you stop worrying about the floor collapsing. You start thinking about what kind of life you actually want to build on top of it. Marcus didn't suddenly become fearless. He still had doubts. He still had moments where headlines made him uneasy. The difference was that doubt no longer dictated his actions. He let the system run. He let time do its work. Momentum has a strange effect on the way you think. At first, Marcus had been obsessed with the number. Then he stopped caring about the exact number and started caring about the direction. Upward mattered more than impressive. Steady mattered more than fast. There were months when nothing exciting happened. No big wins. No dramatic jumps. Just quiet progress. And then there were months when the market dipped. Those months used to scare him. Now they barely registered. He reminded himself that lower prices weren't a threat to someone who was still buying. They were simply discounts he didn't get to control the timing of. Over time, he began to trust the process more than his mood. That trust changed how he experienced money. Money stopped being something he constantly managed. It became something that quietly supported the rest of his life. He noticed that the people around him experienced money very differently. Some were always chasing the next big thing. Some were always anxious about losing what they had. Both groups were exhausted. The chasers were tired from sprinting. The worriers were tired from bracing. Marcus didn't feel like he was sprinting or bracing anymore. He felt like he was walking forward at a pace he could maintain. That pace gave him room to think about things beyond money. His health, his relationships, the kind of work he wanted to be doing in 10 years. When money stops demanding all your attention, your life gets bigger. He also became more patient with his progress. Before, every year felt like a test. Now, years felt like chapters in a long story. Not every chapter was exciting, but every chapter moved the story forward. Marcus realized that most financial advice fails because it ignores time. People talk about what to buy. They argue about where to invest. Very few talk about how long to stay invested. Staying is the hard part. Staying when the market is boring. Staying when the market is scary. Staying when your friends are getting lucky somewhere else. Patience doesn't look impressive in the moment. It only looks impressive in hindsight. As his balance grew, Marcus felt the temptation to do something smart every now and then, to make a bold move, to prove to himself that he understood the game. But every time that urge showed up, he asked himself a simple question. Is this move coming from a plan? Or is it coming from restlessness? Most of the time, it was restlessness. Restlessness is expensive. It disguises itself as ambition, but it usually just burns progress. So Marcus learned to sit with boredom, to let things be uneventful, to allow progress to feel slow even when it wasn't. Years later, he would look back and realize that the uneventful years were the ones that built everything. Nothing flashy happened. No viral wins. No dramatic stories. Just consistency, repeating itself long enough to change his life. And slowly, almost invisibly, the $100,000 turned from a milestone into momentum. The longer Marcus stayed in the game, the more he noticed how time changed the way problems looked. Things that once felt urgent started to feel small. Short-term noise lost its power. He began to think in decades instead of months. That shift alone filtered out a lot of bad decisions. When you think in decades, you stop reacting to every headline. You stop needing every move to feel exciting. You stop trying to win every single year. You just need to avoid doing anything that permanently breaks your progress. Marcus also became more aware of how identity plays into money. Before, he thought of himself as someone who is trying to build wealth. That identity came with pressure. It made every setback feel personal. Over time, that identity softened into something calmer. He started to see himself as someone who follows a process. Processes don't get offended when progress is slow. Processes don't panic when results dip for a while. They just keep running. This changed how he talked to himself during rough periods. When the market dropped, he didn't say, "I messed up." He said, "This is part of the process." When progress felt slow, he didn't say, "This isn't working." He said, "This is how long-term growth feels in real life." There's a quiet maturity that comes with staying invested long enough. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop needing every year to feel like a win. You start to understand that wealth is built in stretches you barely notice. Marcus also noticed that as his financial stress went down, his emotional bandwidth went up. He had more patience in conversations. He made decisions with less urgency. He didn't feel as pressured to optimize every moment of his life. That space changed how he showed up in other areas. He was more present with friends. He took better care of his health. He started saying no to things that drained him, not because he was suddenly wise, but because he wasn't constantly in survival mode anymore. That's another thing people don't talk about. The first real benefit of money isn't luxury. It's relief. Relief from the background anxiety that something small could derail your life. Marcus didn't feel rich, but he felt steady. And steady is an underrated feeling. Steady lets you make choices based on values instead of fear. Steady lets you play a longer game. By the time Marcus stopped thinking about the original $100,000 milestone, his life had quietly moved into a different phase. He wasn't chasing security anymore. He was maintaining it. And maintenance, unlike hustle, doesn't demand drama. Maintenance has a rhythm to it. It isn't exciting. It doesn't come with big emotional swings. It's a set of small actions repeated often enough that they become invisible. Marcus didn't wake up every day thinking about investing. He woke up thinking about his work, his plans, his life. The system ran in the background. That's when he realized something important. The goal was never to think about money all the time. The goal was to build a setup that let him think about money less. When money demands constant attention, it usually means the structure isn't strong enough yet. Strong structures are boring. They don't need constant adjustment. They don't depend on perfect timing. Marcus also became more aware of how comparison distorts progress. Scrolling through social media, it looked like everyone else was moving faster. Someone bought a house. Someone quit their job. Someone hit a massive win in a single year. Those moments used to make him question his pace. Now he understood that highlight reels compress time. You only see outcomes, not the quiet years that led up to them. Comparing your steady path to someone else's highlight moments is a fast way to feel behind even when you're ahead. So he stopped measuring himself against other people's timelines. He measured himself against his own process. Was he still consistent? Was he still patient? Was he still avoiding decisions he knew he'd regret later? If the answer was yes, he let the rest go. Over time, his confidence shifted. It wasn't the loud confidence of someone who thinks they've figured everything out. It was the quiet confidence of someone who knows they don't need to. He didn't need to predict markets. He didn't need to catch trends early. He didn't need to make bold moves to prove anything. He just needed to stay in motion. And that's the part that surprises people. The most powerful move after your first six figures isn't a dramatic change. It's refusing to change what already works. Most wealth is built by people who keep doing reasonable things for an unreasonable amount of time. As the years passed, Marcus stopped thinking of progress as something that happened in big jumps. It happened in quiet accumulation, in months that didn't feel special, in years that didn't feel dramatic. He started to notice that consistency has a compounding effect on your mindset too. The longer you show up, the easier it becomes to keep showing up. At some point, investing stopped feeling like effort. It felt like routine. And routines don't require motivation. They only require that you don't interrupt them. Marcus also noticed how differently people treat money at different stages. Some people never feel like they have enough, no matter how much they make. Some people feel secure with far less because their systems are strong. Security isn't just about numbers. It's about predictability. Predictability reduces anxiety. When you know what happens next, you don't spend as much energy worrying about it. This is why systems matter more than clever ideas. Ideas feel exciting in the moment. Systems quietly change your life. Marcus also became more forgiving of himself. He stopped expecting perfect discipline. He allowed for normal human moments. A vacation didn't feel like failure anymore. A month of lower savings didn't feel like falling behind. He zoomed out. He looked at years instead of weeks. That long view softened a lot of self-criticism. He realized that the story of building wealth isn't a straight line. It's a path with detours. But detours only matter if you never return to the path. Returning to the path is what compounds. Over time, Marcus stopped needing the validation of milestones. $150,000 didn't feel as emotional as $100,000 had. $200,000 felt calm, not electric. The numbers were still growing, but his relationship with them had changed. They weren't proof of success anymore. They were tools. Tools to create options. Tools to reduce stress. Tools to buy time. And buying time turned out to be the most meaningful purchase he could make.